Welcome back to Learn Your Stripes. I'm Ryan Guillory.
And I'm Michael Moran. And today we're going to be discussing play scenarios and a couple of other questions that have come from our audience. But before we get into that, we're going to review our play from last week's episode. And it went a little like this. With 47 seconds left in the second quarter, A has the ball 2nd and 7 at the A46. Just prior to the snap, A22 goes in motion. After A22 goes in motion, the entire offensive line moves from the set position with hands on knees down to a hand on the ground. A17 then throws an incomplete pass to A22. And as always, we're looking for, if there's a foul, what are our options at high school level, college level, down in distance, and your game clock and your play clock. Now, this is an illegal shift and a live ball foul at both levels. 5-yard penalty in both high school and in college. So we'll have 2nd and 12 if accepted, or if the coach chooses to decline, we'll have 3rd and 7. And the clock is stopped due to the incomplete pass, not the flag. So that's important. And in high school, B cannot choose to have the game clock start on the snap because the clock is stopped due to the incomplete pass. However, in college, B also does not have the option of a 10-second runoff, again, because of that incomplete pass. So the clock in this case is going to start on the snap, will be a 25-second play clock at both levels.
Yeah, this week, as Michael mentioned, we're going outside of the new IHSA Mechanics Manual. We're going to be responding to questions and topics that you've submitted, and we're going to try to come at this both from the high school level and from the college level, and hopefully have some help for everyone out there for both levels. So our first question comes from our producer, Jenny, who asked, how can someone interested in becoming a football official start the process and get involved? Do you want to start with that one, Michael?
Yeah, that's kind of a loaded question, but a lot of folks that I talk to, really, it's a lot of guys miss the game, or gals, I guess, either or. But a lot of folks miss the game. So if you played in high school, or maybe you played at college, and now you've started the 9-to-5 job, and you're just kind of missing to get back out there. That's kind of one thing that draws folks in. Other folks just love football. Maybe they grew up watching football on Saturdays or Sundays. So, I myself started off with baseball, and started officiating baseball when I was 15, and just kind of met through some people, and I casually mentioned I would officiate baseball, and somebody stopped me one time and said, "Have you ever thought about football?" And that's how I got interested. So, really, it's just. Mine is kind of more luck, I guess, than anything. I didn't really jump into football with 2 feet, but I think it's just if you have that knack for it, you can look out there. The simplest thing I would say is, Google things related to football officiating. Obviously, Ryan and I are both members of the IOA here in Indianapolis, and that provides a wealth of information. So that's kind of a cheap plug on our podcast here. But I would also just encourage starting at, Pee Wee leagues. Find if your city or county has a local Pee Wee league. Sometimes it's called a PAL league for, Police Athletic League. Other local CYO leagues, Catholic Youth Leagues. You can get started in there, and just ask those community leaders if they need officials. And a lot of times there's veterans out there that'll help you get started. Ryan, how'd you get going?
Yeah, my story is a little strange, I guess. But I agree with you that it starts with the local associations, really, and or youth leagues. I don't have a good story of somebody I know saying, "Hey, you should do this," or "Hey, you should try this." It was August 31st of one year. I can't even recall exactly when it was. I want to say maybe 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. And I was literally sitting on my couch, and I thought, hey, I would like to become a football official. And I know that sounds corny and it sounds ridiculous, but for whatever reason, I decided I want to do it. So I took out my computer and I Googled how to become a football official in Indiana. And I went to the IHSAA, and it said you had to pass a test to become licensed. And the deadline to do that was September 1st, which was the very next day. So I realized I was not going to become a football official that year. It wasn't feasible. But what I did is I became a licensed basketball official, and I worked some basketball that fall. And then I took the football test and passed that, and got into football. from what I know of people in other states, it's pretty similar. I mean, the exact structure is probably a little bit different, but it all starts with local associations and local meetings, right? At the high school level, as Michael and I said, we both belong to the Indiana Officials Association, IOA. And that's where we go to local meetings for rules, mechanics, video reviews, it's a social aspect to it as well.
Sure.
So that's really the high school aspect. In colleges, you have rules meetings in different areas. And fortunately, there's some really great officials in the Indianapolis area who host those meetings. And so we go to that for college as well. But it's local stuff, to drill down and to meet other people. It's how you really get started. So the process for us was you pass the test, you have to join a local association, you start going to those meetings. Our association has a good class for first time officials, when you're getting ready to take the test and pass the test. And there's some really great officials who run that. My work schedule, unfortunately, didn't allow me to take that. So I've always felt, on the one hand, I kind of had a setback because I just kind of floundered around for a couple years doing, a local game here, a freshman game here or there, as opposed to really knowing people are getting very involved. But the flip side of that is that a couple years after that, I had a stroke of luck, and the high school crew that we're on right now, they were looking for someone about a week and a half before the season started. And
Oh, wow.
I emailed and said, "Hey, I'm available." And they said, "All right, come to the scrimmage on Friday." And I think that was on a Wednesday. And I said, "Okay." And I did. And this is, I think, my 6th year on our crew now.
Nice.
And I got onto a crew with a bunch of guys who either were in or working towards college officiating as well. So everything really fell into place from one dumb day sitting on my couch saying, "Hey, I want to become a football official," and realizing it was too late to take the test for that year, but then sort of developing it over time. So my advice to anyone wanting to get into it, I just echo Michael. Look into your state's licensing procedure. But you can tend to work youth games, even if you're not licensed, because there's not a lot of officials out there. It does require a background check to those types of things usually, but it's a good way to get started. You'll meet people, get through the licensing, join your local association, and take advantage of every opportunity that comes up. We were talking earlier, before we hit record. If somebody comes to us, it really doesn't matter what the level. If somebody comes to us and says, "Hey, do you want to work this game?" Our one answer is yes.
Correct.
Unless I have another game scheduled, right? Then, you can't double book, obviously. But if I'm available and somebody comes to me who has a game to assign to somebody and says, "Hey, do you want to work this game?" or "Do you want to work this game at this position?" There's one right answer, and it's yes. Thank you.
Yes, I can. Yeah, I mean, if you had asked me a couple years ago, I never would have thought I would have been working college football or even Friday nights or anything like that. I was, like you said, just, doing baseball, doing football. I never ventured into basketball, but I would say to most folks, start in any sport, right? If it's basketball, if it's lacrosse, if it's soccer, start there, and you never know where you're going to end up and what you like. There's guys that I know who have worked state championships at basketball and baseball and football, and even all in the same year. There's a gentleman I know who's worked national championships for college football, College World Series, all D1 level basketball, all over the state. So, and of course, if you want to know more, you can always email us at learnyourstripes@gmail.com, and we'd be happy to. There's a cheap plug. We'd be happy to always take questions there.
Yeah, I mean, especially, I know obviously right now, at least, our listenership is largely based in the Indianapolis area or in Indiana generally, but we're certainly happy to either help out as we can or put you in touch with people who could help get you going. Because I know here, the IHSAA offers some scholarships for license fees for new officials as well.
They do, yeah.
As part of the process to get people in. There's a mentor-mentee program, which I think is pretty great as well. So there's a lot of opportunities to get in. I know there's some costs to get involved, uniforms, equipment, that type of stuff, but having that license fee waived and those types of things, it certainly helps with that. So, um, if you have an inkling that you want to do it, reach out to us, reach out to whomever. But like I said, like Michael said, email us. We're happy to talk to you,
Of
put you in
course.
touch with people. It's obviously a big part of our lives. I mean, uh, not to be flippant, but we're literally doing a podcast about it. But it's a big part of our lives. And, I love being on the field. I love the people I meet, but, the guys on my high school crew and people I work with in college, but, especially my high school crew, man, I mean, these are some of my best friends in the whole world. So
Hmm.
it's more than just showing up on Fridays or Saturdays, blowing a whistle, throwing a flag and going home.
Oh,
So
once you kind of get into it, you learn the massive network of people that have some way, um, every time I step on the field, I've got a dozen people that run through my mind that help me where I've gotten
yeah.
to so far, and just continue to help me. And I'm texting different people on Friday nights. Hey, do you have anything crazy? Hey, how'd your game go? Where were you guys? What were, that kind of stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah, and I think the great thing there too is that, especially in football, like I said, I work basketball and football, so I can sort of compare the two. But my experience in football is that people really bend over backwards to help you, right?
Hmm.
Now, you want to respect their time, you want to respect the effort that people are giving, but there are some people who have put in so much extra time to help me over the years that when I sit back sometimes and think about it, it's amazing. And, you always feel like, why, that person certainly could be doing better things than listening to me talk about a play or watching a video of a play I had. But, I've been the beneficiary of some extraordinary generosity and kindness from some folks who've reached some high levels and really know what they're doing. And that's obviously had a huge impact on me along the way.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
Always be open minded, and you're gonna whatever you put into it is what you're gonna get out. So if you show up willing to work and willing to be ready, you're gonna have a lot of good things happen. You're gonna have a lot of opportunities.
yeah, it's a pay it forward kind of thing. As Michael and I think have noted, we've both benefited in the past and we still are benefiting by people who help us every day. People I can text and say, hey, I had this situation come up. What would you do? Or can I email you this video of this play and, talk about it? And, I still pinch myself sometimes just thinking of,
Right.
all the help that people give me. But, the flip side of that too is that as we move up as well, or get additional experience, it's incumbent upon us as well to, to return that favor. And that's
Yep.
why, like we said, if we can help you get started, reach out to us, email us, comment on our Facebook page, whatever it takes, we're happy to help. So I think that's a good way to get started. I think we're going to talk about a few play scenarios now and how we might
Yeah.
handle those. The first one came from Steve, a referee in the IHSA, who I have a ton of respect for. Sort of a play they encountered and just thoughts on how we might handle this. So let's say you have a chippy game. It looks like there might be a fight or something. And we've talked in a past episode about, what to do in circumstances of a fight, how you treat that, what you're recording, what to do if a player runs off the bench to participate in a fight. So this scenario it looked like players might be close to a fight, the teams might be close to a fight, but nothing ended up happening, thankfully. There's a player on A's sideline who anticipates that there might be a fight, who comes onto the field between plays, but there's no fight occurs. That player doesn't throw a punch, doesn't push anyone, just comes off the bench, but there's no fight there. So in that scenario, Michael, do you have any foul or what would you do to handle that?
In this case, if things are chippy, this might be long winded, but preemptively you can kind of sense that everybody should be moving in. And Ryan and I predominantly work wing positions, but even your back judge, you can come up and help. Especially that second level between linebackers, your back judge can get in there and help keep things out too. But everybody should be pinching in. Do I have a foul? How far on the field is he? Can I ask that?
Let's say inside the numbers or
Yeah.
between the numbers and the sideline.
I think preemptively, I'm going to throw a foul for a sideline warning. You could even get away with an unsportsmanlike if you really wanted to. But I'm probably too nice and probably too lenient. But to help continue to prevent, luckily if we didn't have a fight in this case, I'm going to have a sideline warning and just nip that in the butt right away. if he's out far enough, we might put some yardage on it and make it the 5 yard. We might skip the warning and go right to the 5 yard. That's high school anyway, and go that route with it. I don't know, Ryan. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't disagree there. I think a sideline warning's okay. I think context matters too, right? There's no fight here, but let's say if there's been 5 UNSs so far in this game, this might be a different situation for me, right?
Sure.
If it's been a vanilla game and nothing at all has happened, it's just some tempers flared all of a sudden and the guy comes off the sideline onto the field, probably a warning. Or if I can get him off the field, if he's 2 steps on the field and I yell, get off, and he goes off immediately, flag's probably not coming out for me. But I think a lot of it has to do with, the context of it as well, right? If it's a rivalry game, if it's one of those games where the coaches and the ADs tell you in the week coming up, hey, this is our big rival, we might have some chippiness.
I love those emails.
Well, I appreciate them, right? Because like
it.
you said, we're going to know to pinch in harder. You have that fullback dive that goes for 2 yards. We're coming in a lot harder in that game than we are in, just the random Friday night game. 10 minutes in the first half, A gains 2 yards. And, we kind of, for lack of a better word, stroll off the sideline towards the numbers to, get the 40-second clock going and get the spot. But
Sure.
if we know there's a history between the teams, if we know every year they're chippy, every year they want to fight, something like that, so I think it's a common sense type of thing. You have to know the game that you're working. You have to know how your team is responding. You have to know like what your sideline control is, right? I mean, Michael and I think tend to be in control of our sidelines, right? So if I've got a player, who after a kickoff or a turnover wants to come onto the field, I can kind of bark at him and get him off the field, usually. So I'm okay there. But if I've got a team that's pushing me and they're wanting to come out to the numbers and no matter what I say, they're not getting off, well, that's when we're going to have to look at flags.
Yeah, build those rapport with your coaches.
Yeah.
Just prior to kickoff, we all meet in the middle, we huddle up. But just before I run into our little crew huddle there, I'm on my sideline right at the 50 looking left and right, and I call out to the players, and it's very simple. Gentlemen, I'm glad we're playing football tonight. Tonight the white is mine. I expect everybody to stay back and stay out of the way. Give my chain some room, please. If you have any questions, move it through your coach. Your coaches help me keep everybody back, and we're going to have fun.
Yeah, I mean, every team, yeah. Every team, regardless of if they designate it or not, they have at least one coach who's their quote get back coach, right?
Coach. Yeah.
I try to talk to him before the game just to say, hey, if I need some help, I'm going to you. But even if we haven't had that discussion, especially we again, sort of a good episode for us to review all the mechanics that we've gone through, right? But let's think about scrimmage kicks or punts. So in punts, I am taking off at the snap and I'm sprinting, to the extent that I can sprint, I'm sprinting downfield, right? But when I'm doing that, I'm looking into the field at blocks and for the ball coming down. I cannot look in front of me. Is there a coach or a player? Because I'm going to miss something, so that's an instance where I'm going 30, 35, 40 yards. And I need 30, 35, 40 yards of clear white space. So every time there's a punt, I look down the sideline and I yell behind the white, please. And 99+% of the time I hear at least one coach respond to that with behind the white. And, that's, we're working together and we're keeping that sideline clear, and that's all you can hope for.
I would encourage everyone, and the manual talks about it too, but after a try, we're all getting together. We jog up the sidelines. So we're starting at the 10, and I'm going with our back judge. But we head straight from the 10, a straight line right to the sideline, and then we work our way up as a pair. And then I stop and he continues. But that's the time, and I would encourage too, Ryan, I believe you and our umpire do it as well. I would encourage folks, if you don't do that now, go straight to your sideline and work your way up. I think it looks clean. And then it gives you that chance to clear the space out and kind of reset the tone before the next drive to say, hey, this is my space. We got a little off of our scenario here, but we went down a rabbit hole. But it's all about preventative officiating, I think, and building that rapport throughout the game.
Right. Yeah, and I think it circles back to the question, right? If we're in control of our sideline, if we see that player start to come onto the field, we've got a pretty good shot of getting him off with nothing happening, getting him off the field with the help of a coach or just him walking back. So, control your sideline. It's going to help you in this scenario, but if you're faced with this, you have to know the scenario you're in. What's the context of the game? What's happened up to that point? What's the history between these schools?
Sure.
And if there's something there, that's probably going to affect the level of your flag. So I apologize. There's no black and white answer there. Yes, I'm definitely throwing UNS, or no, I'm not throwing UNS, but, for lack of a better description, you'll know it when you see it.
There you go. Let's move on. We got another one here. We have offense. A throws a deep touchdown pass just before the end of the period. A flag is down for an offensive hold. How should the crew handle this? And is it okay to get together on a conference to figure this out?
Right.
Yes.
And
Always.
yes. This goes back to the idea of you don't end a period on a accepted live ball foul, right?
Yeah.
There's the scenarios that you need to know as to when the period gets extended for an extra down and when it doesn't. And those are a little bit different now between high school and college, because in college, if there's a loss of down foul, the offended team can now accept that extra play or not. There's an option now. They have options, whereas before there weren't, which was the whole controversy from that game a couple years ago with the intentional grounding at the end when an additional play was granted, when at the time, that wasn't the rule, but it is now. So this is a difference between the levels, but I think this is a play you don't encounter it terribly often, but it's such a unique scenario that if the referee needs help or if the person calling it needs help, get in there and conference and get it right. This is one where we've talked in the past that we need to talk through penalties and enforcements, get on the radio when you're reporting it, so that, if the calling official and or the referee seem a little confused, then somebody else on the crew can come in and fix it. So
yeah, I mean, if you have radios, they're great for that, and if you don't, absolutely get together in conference. So, and in this scenario, it's a deep pass, so we might assume 40, 50, 60 yards maybe. And in 5-man, right, one of your wings might be down there with the back judge. Hopefully one of your wings is down there with the back judge to help out. Maybe not. But potentially you've got 2 guys that see touchdown and 2 or 3 guys that see flag. So you got to know what's going on. So
right.
It's okay to come back.
Yeah, it's fine to conference. This is a good scenario too. We've talked already about when you have a flag down, short whistle blast to alert everybody that there's a flag down. This is one of those plays where, as Michael said, right, if we've got 50 yards of distance between where the flag is and where the back judge and the wings are, the person who throws that flag really needs to get on that whistle so that we have some idea, hey, something happened here. But yeah, this is, you don't need a 5-minute conference for this play, but it's fine. Get it right. If it takes you 30 seconds, a minute and a half, get it right. Moving on to our next question. A friend of our show, Tom, asked, this is a fantastic question. I think we could probably do 2 or 3 episodes on, and perhaps down the line we'll do so. But the question was, what goes through your mind when choosing to call a foul or pass on it and talk to the player instead? I'm curious where officials draw the line between preventive officiating versus coaching. So, Michael, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Tom, I'm still trying to figure it out. I think there's a lot of, I was part of several study groups and sessions about a year ago that they talked about what they call a 2-step process, and a lot of it came to holds. If you have a grab and restrict as one category, if it's at the point of attack, you want to make sure that it's actually got a material impact on the play. If it's not at the point of the attack, you may be going in and just talking to the player and saying, hey, if the play comes this way, I'd have a foul. I want to put a pin in officiating versus coaching. I definitely want to hit on that, but the first half of the question of when to call a foul, and something that I'm still learning is having that material impact on a play and a material restriction. Or I said that backwards. Having a material restriction and a material impact on the play is something I've always been taught. So are you seeing a jersey stretch? Are you seeing, a player that you'll hear the phrase take a step away? A lot of times, especially when it comes to a hold, you can see the defender, it changes his stride. Or in the case of a DPI, maybe a receiver's body is turned. Those are some things that you can look for. Like I said, I want to pin the coaching and come back to that. Ryan, what are you looking for when you like passing on fouls or if you're calling a foul?
Yeah, I agree with you on the two-step process on a hold. The other really good advice I got somewhere along the way was specifically using the example of a hold, that when you see it, you talk to yourself, that's a hold, that's a hold, that's a hold, throw, right? You're talking to yourself, you repeat it 3 times, or that's a foul, that's a foul, that's a foul, throw, right? So don't worry about a late flag. The flag's either correct or it's not. But especially in the instance of a hold, you want to make sure, as Michael said, does it have a material impact on the play? If it does, then that's one where I'm thinking through the 3 times. That's a foul, that's a foul, that's a foul, throw. If you can't get to that point, if you can't get through it 3 times and be confident that it was a foul, then you don't throw. So that's how we take the holds, right? And I agree with Michael, right? If I see a hold that's 10 yards, inside of the field and 5 yards back from the runner, so it has no impact whatsoever on the run, my flag's not going down, but I'm going to, after that play, go and talk to the guy. Hey, I saw that. If you were a few yards in the other direction, you'd have gotten a flag there. So, be careful, get the hands inside the frame, whatever it takes there.
Sure.
So that's specifically there. A few others. So we're wing officials in high school. I had I can think of those plays that we have sometimes where the wide receiver flinches, right? And there's degrees of that, certainly. But those ones where it's just a tiny flinch, and sometimes they'll even drop their head because they know they moved, and they don't get a flag from me. What we're looking for there, does the defense react, right? Is there some advantage? Does the receiver take off? That's false start. Does the defender react to a slight flinch? False start. What's going on there? But I had that play happen last year, and there's an official who I have a ton of respect for, going back to the people who spend more time on me than I probably deserve. But we watched the film together, and he said, no, that you need to pass on that. The defender didn't react. There was no advantage gained, and it wasn't there. And so I didn't throw that flag, and I'm glad I didn't. And that's hard, right? That's an experience thing. The first flag I ever threw in my life was for a hold. I was working an umpire in a freshman football game, and I had a left tackle who just manhandled the defensive end. I mean, it was a grab and restrict take. You could probably check every box on a hold if you wanted on that one. And I mean, it was a hold, but if you go down the rule book, it was a hold. The problem was that was the left tackle. They ran a sweep around the right end. So this hold took place about 30 yards away from where the action was happening. Right. It was a hold. It was not a foul in hindsight. So those are little things you're looking for, right? I also want to draw a distinction when I'm thinking through what to throw and not, a couple more things there. At the IFOA college clinic, Gary Arthur, an NFL line of scrimmage official, comes in and talks through, if we're thinking through illegal formation or defensive offsides, there's the warn zone and there's a foul, right? The warn zone, the concept there is a tackle has to have his head between, on the center's hip, right, pretty much, right? If the head is between the hip and the end of the butt, back of the butt, I don't know directionally what you would consider there, but as long as it's still between the hip and the backside there, then you warn them, right? Mm-hmm. You warn them, hey, take a half step up, take a step up, whatever they need to do. If there is space between that tackle's head and the center's butt, it's a foul. It's not a warning. It's a foul, right? So that's what I think through when I see that. I want to make them legal if I can, but a foul is a foul. If there's space, it's a foul. Now, the same thing that he's taught us at those clinics is that those outside receivers, you give them up to a yard off the line, right? So we have sort of an angle coming off the ball, coming back towards those outside receivers if we're looking at formations. So that's what I'm thinking through there. In high school, I hope that anyone in a position of power will cover their ears for a moment. But there's a mercy rule in high school, right? In Indiana, there's a mercy rule, the 35-point running clock.
Second half. Yep.
In the second half.
Yep.
I had a recent one where I had a play where I had a lineman going down into a stance and the receiver's coming in, starts his motion before the lineman's hand gets down. There's about a minute and a half left. It's a 40-something point game. The clock's been running the whole second half. I didn't throw it. I saw it. I was able to report it later. Hey, I saw this because of the context, because of our scenario. I passed on it. Had no impact whatsoever on that game. The whole idea of the running clock is that, we're trying to end those games. I'm not going to throw that foul in that game. If there's 10 minutes left in the first quarter and it's tied, and I see that, it's a foul.
Yeah.
It's a foul in both instances. I'm not throwing it at the end of that game. Now, the flip side of that is college, right? And we've had one of our graders recently that we've heard say, regardless of the score, regardless of the time, a foul is a foul, and you throw it. So that's just a different mindset thinking through that, running clock game in high school at the end versus a college game that you might have a 60-point game and you see that play, it's a foul.
Yeah, I think we're trying to stress the point of when it comes to this, we're not looking to call fouls. Another mentor of mine always talks about, getting the big ones. Right. When we're talking about a material impact on the play or restriction, we're talking about, somebody in the top row, we're talking about seeing it on TV. We're looking for things that are really impactful to the game. And as Ryan alluded to, time and score, as we're told at our collegiate level, that's not a factor. If a foul's a foul. But the important thing is we're managing the game. We're not controlling the game. We're not influencing the game. We are managing the game.
Correct.
Similar going back to our player coming out on the field there we talked about earlier. If the sideline's been well behaved all game, the foul is only going to hurt your credibility and only is not going to help you rapport with that coach. And just like this instance here with Ryan talking about where there's 90 seconds left in the game, it's in hand and we're just trying to, let these kids finish out without anybody getting hurt and trying to get to the end of this. We're managing the game. But on that same note, I want to say too, safety fouls, we haven't touched on this yet. Safety fouls have to be called. But obviously your targetings, your blocks below the waist, any sort of clipping or block in the back, roughing the passer, holder, kicker, snapper, all of that, those safety fouls, any late hits, you have to get those 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Nothing good happens from a late hit that isn't picked up on.
Yeah, a safety foul or an unsportsmanlike conduct foul, that is a foul regardless of time, score, situation, high school, college, Pee-wee league, you name it. Whatever game you're working, those you get regardless of context.
Absolutely.
In high school, and again, if I get an email tomorrow from an observer or somebody saying I'm completely wrong, then I'll learn. Like, it'll be a learning opportunity for me. But with the whole concept of the clock running late in the game, if my right tackle flinches slightly in a 55-point game, with 30 seconds to go, I'm going to swallow that flag. I've not always been good at that, and the guys on my crew know that I'm probably the worst one for still calling some of those things in those scenarios. But I'd like to think I'm improving there. But yeah, when we're talking about some you might pass on in high school in certain scenarios, what we're talking about are those line of scrimmage, 5-yard types of fouls. Like Michael said, safety foul, UNS, the big ones. A foul is a foul regardless of time and scenario, regardless of level.
Now, Tom, back to your question about coaching. I don't coach. If a player is blocking a certain way, maybe his hands are outside, or a receiver is pushing off, or a defensive player is getting handsy, whatever the scenario is, I'm going to go to the coach first and say, Coach, you need to talk to 55. He needs to line up. He needs to not hold. I'm seeing this. I talk to the coach and let the coach address it. The best thing I can think of is in high school we introduced the blindside block a few years ago, and it was new, and not a lot of folks understood it. And in our high school code, we're looking for the blocker to lead with open hands. So if the foul was called, I'd walk to the coach and say, "Hey, here's the rule. This is how to avoid that, open hands," and then I would let the coach relay that on to the player. I don't feel it's my job to coach because I don't get paid to coach the players, and I don't want to step on the coach's toes, and again damage the rapport that I have with them.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked some throughout the year of the decisions that coaches have to make, the analytics or whatnot, are just based on their experience. I don't know that stuff. I don't study it. I don't know, right? So I don't really question when a coach makes a decision. That's not my job. I don't look at them funny. I don't do anything there. Coach makes his decision. My job is to enforce it, right? But in terms of coaching players and preventive officiating, it's like, going back to the example of the warn zone on, an offsides or an illegal formation, right? The defensive end, the front of his helmet is slightly over the front of the ball. So he's in the neutral zone. But it's not past the back of the ball. It's just slightly in there. That's a warning, right? I go to him and I say, "Hey, watch your head, get back foot, 2 feet, whatever it takes."
Coach 93 needs to get back. Yeah.
Yeah. So I warn the player, we warn the coach, so that once we do have that foul, the coach knows, hey, we've tried, right? We've given him the warning. Usually if you warn the player and then warn the coach is also going to yell out to the player.
Sure.
So if the player then forces your hand, I mean, you've done what you can, but yeah, I mean, I don't need to, go flag happy on those, warn zone type of things early on in the game. Going back to the example of the receiver who might slightly flinch, I'll usually mention that to them because they know when they've done that. But, I just want to make them aware of, hey, if it happens again, you pull that defender off, we might have a foul. So I think that's preventive officiating. If I see two knuckleheads kind of getting in each other's face and it's not taunting. Taunting is a foul, but right, they're just kind of going back and forth verbally. They're not pushing, they're not punching. I'm going to get in there, make sure they both know I saw it, but, I'm not throwing a UNS just for that at that point. So I consider that preventive officiating. I had a question posed at a clinic I was helping out with this summer where a new official asked me, "How many flags do you throw a game?" And it really caught me off guard because I don't have a quota, right? The pay doesn't go up because I throw the fifth flag or some even number foul flag.
Believe it or not, we do not get paid more for that hanky to be on the field. Nope, we do not.
My ideal game is a game where I never throw a flag. All I do is blow a whistle, use my arms for the various signals, and then spot the ball, right?
Right.
If I can swallow the flag for a game, fantastic. That's great. I don't go out looking for it. Coaching, like I said, I officiate basketball. So if I'm officiating like second grade basketball, I consider some of what I do coaching out there. Hey, make sure you dribble. You just took 8 steps. Next time, try to take it down to 5 or 6.
Right.
When you're dealing with those, first, second, third graders there. That's kind of coaching. I don't do that in football. But if I can find a way to prevent having to throw a flag, I will. But again, safety fouls, UNS is the big ones. The fouls that grandma in the top row by the press box can see the flags coming out.
Yep.
If it requires it, then we'll throw.
Let's get to JP. JP wants to know, what things did you learn early in your career that stuck with you?
I learned that you don't throw a hole 30 yards away from the action. I learned pretty early on, like I said earlier, when an opportunity presents itself, your response is yes and thank you. And then you prepare yourself to succeed. I learned, especially in football. Basketball is, I'm not going to use this podcast to trash my experiences there or anything, because I've had some great ones there too. I find football to be more of a collaborative effort among everyone. And so, the rule of thumb is you never throw your fellow official under the bus.
Absolutely.
It's part of why we don't do it on the field. If a coach asks me why the other guy threw the flag, my response is, I'll either get some information if it helps in that point, or he had a different view than I did, coach, and this is what he saw. But I'm not going to say, boy, I think he blew that one. It's part of why on this podcast we don't talk about, I know there's social media things of things about calls from certain various sports or games. It's not my job. It's a collaborative effort. My next perfect game will be the first one that I've had. And so my objective is to keep getting better. People are helping me do that. If I can return that favor to them, I'm going to do that. And then, if we're elevating each other, then our avocation, our sport as a whole is going to rise higher. And so it just, I think the early things were learning that material advantage, and learning that we're all in this together, and people are going to help you out to help them out as well.
I'd say for me, it's to slow down. When I first got started in this 10 years ago, it was, I wanted to prove I could still go out and run and keep up and do this. And, Father Time is undefeated. So as I've learned to get older, I've had to learn to slow down. I've learned the cross angle over distance is something I've always heard. When we talk about pylon plays, when we talk about getting the right angle for a hold or a pass interference call, or staying with the quarterback, sometimes you can be 30 yards away if you have the right angle and get a great look at it, and sometimes you can be 2 yards on it, but if you've got the wrong angle, you'll never see it. So angle over distance, I think, is important. And slow down. I'm still working on that. The other thing I need to learn on, when I give an incomplete signal, if anybody ever watches me, I am stiff as a board, and I don't know how to relax my shoulders or, just drop my arms just so. I need to work on just not being so stiff. So that's something I'm still working on. So, but you can always go out. Once you become aware of things, I'll ask Ryan, hey, I want to try to work on this tonight. Or if I'm working with my college crew, I'll ask Steve Martin, who we had a couple weeks ago. I'll ask him, hey, Steve, I want to try to work on this today, and just work with that. And then we have the benefit of film nowadays too. You can always go back and watch it. But slow down and just make sure you're in the right spot. Being in the right spot can help you so much more than you know.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that I'll add. So we talk and we meet with officials from Division I colleges. What is it now? Power 5 or whatever we're currently at.
Sure.
Officials who've reached very high levels, right? Things that we can only aspire to. And the thing that's always striking about that is just how vulnerable they can be in those meetings, right? They don't show the plays where they make a brilliant call, right? Or the play where, they somehow beat a college running back to the goal line or something like that, right? The plays that they show are where they've made mistakes, right? And the idea is that, again, nobody's ever called the perfect game. Even at that level, people make mistakes. This is how you can learn from it. So early on, I think all of our tendencies is to kind of defend ourselves and to not be vulnerable. If somebody gives you some constructive criticism, it's like, well, but hey, I got this right or I got that right.
Don't do that.
Right.
I've made that mistake. Don't do that.
Correct. When someone with a lot of experience is trying to give you constructive criticism, take it and learn from it. There's a reason for it. Again, none of us are perfect. We never will be. But that's what we're aspiring to. But as I've come through this over the years, it's just the idea of just being vulnerable, putting yourself out there and being willing to show, hey, I screwed this up, right? Our high school crew, we watch our film and we send each other texts and we send each other notes, right? So one of the things that I don't look for the plays I got right. I look for the ones where I either screwed something up so I can say, hey, how can I do this better? How can I fix this? Any thoughts on that? And I think that's what we each do, because the plays I got right, and it doesn't matter. It's the plays that I got wrong that I need to learn. How do I not repeat that mistake next time? And experience thing there. One last question we'll get to. What does your typical week look like preparing for a game? Do you follow a structured schedule or just have certain goals or benchmarks that you try to accomplish throughout the week?
Well, lately I've started recording a podcast, so I've had to change my pregame a little bit. I think I've alluded to it before. I handle a lot of the pregame stuff. Ryan and I both do. I guess I should clarify, but we handle a lot of the pregame scouting for our Friday night games. I'm putting together meet places and times and attire and what to bring if we're going long sleeves, short sleeves, what the weather's going to be like. I put all that together, and then Ryan is scouting his sideline. I'm scouting my sideline. Ryan's crafting emails to the AD. I'm stepping all over Ryan's toes with this. But the point is, I used to try to do, hey, Monday I'm going to do this, Tuesday I'm going to do this. And that can get difficult. I've got family obligations now. I've got children that are getting older and trying to work through that. Obviously, we all, football doesn't pay the bills. If it did, we'd just work on Fridays. So you've got other job obligations. I try to have a general benchmark of looking at film from a Friday. If Friday ends, we go out, we get dinner, just kind of relax, take the night off from football after that, just decompress. If you've got film on Saturday, that's great. Sometimes it comes maybe Sunday or Monday, but I try to by Monday or Tuesday to have my previous week kind of out of my head. I've looked at these plays, I've talked about them, I've learned from them. It's time to move on. And then Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm usually putting together a pregame for the following Friday. And then by Thursday, it's packing up the bag, getting ready to go, so it's ready to go. And then Friday night, we roll out. That's a little bit of my week. And now with Saturdays, it's added a complication of coming home Friday night, unpacking real quick, and repacking for Saturday.
Yeah, I don't think it will surprise Michael or anyone on my crew or anyone who knows me that I follow a very rigid schedule throughout the week for this. So the way that I do it is hopefully we'll have high school film by Sunday. Typically we'll have college film by Sunday as well. Mm-hmm. I try to make Sunday my film days. If I've done games on Friday and Saturday, during the summer and during the off season, I use Sundays as my long run days. I go for, a long run throughout my neighborhood or the area. During the season, if I've worked games on Friday and Saturday, I don't do that on Sunday. Sunday's a day I'm going to take off from that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through film on Sunday. Mondays, I get into the rule book again. So Monday nights, I know some people wake up early and do it. I'm not an early person. So I come home from work, I eat dinner, walk the dogs, and then I get into the rule book. And for whatever reason, rules 1, 2, and 3 are by far the longest. So usually through Monday and Tuesday night, I want to get through rules 1 through 3 in those nights. And then if I can add in 4 or so, between Monday and Tuesday, I'll feel like I'm in good shape. So Monday night, I try to do rules 1 and 2, or at least rules 1 and half of 2, and then I go for a run. Tuesday night, I go through the rest of rule 2, 3, maybe try to get 4. That's a weightlifting night for me. And then I try to go through the mechanics manual that night. Wednesday night, I run again, but then I go through, hopefully by that point, 5 through 7 in the rule book, and go through the mechanics manual again. Thursday night is a lifting night again, and then I go through 8 through 10, or 9 and 10 if I've had a really good week in the rule book, and I go several times through the mechanics manual that night. Thursday is also my packing night. My packing is very rigid. I have these packing, I don't know what you call them, cubes or cloth cubes, right? So I have certain colors. I have certain colors for high school. I have certain colors for college, right? Yep. So I pack my high school cube. I pack my college cube. I get my bag ready, so that if I've got a Friday game and a Saturday game, I'm just grabbing, the different cube to put in my bag and leave out the door. Friday, we're doing our high school game. We're probably going out after. Sometimes I'll come home and go through the mechanics manual again, or maybe on Saturday morning. But between Friday night and Saturday morning, I'm going through it again. And then if there's a game on Saturday, go do the game and then start the whole process over. But again, I don't think it will blow anyone's mind that I have a very structured schedule that I try to follow. Of course, work or other things might come up from time to time, but that's generally the outline that I try to follow each week.
I would just say too, when it comes to all this, I know I can get overwhelmed very easily, and I'm not as structured as Ryan, but I've learned that 20 minutes is better than nothing. If you can, right. I'm not much of a morning person either. I'm usually later in the afternoons, but we talk about, I think there's 3 things to your game. I think it's knowing the rules. I think it's mechanics, and I think it's physical appearance. That's my kind of opinion on those 3 things to try to focus on. And that's balancing between how do you look? Do you look the part? You know, is your uniform, does it fit properly? Are you in good shape, right? We've got to move up and down the field with these athletes. How are your mechanics? How's your game management? Are you getting to where you need to be? Do you understand how to, use your crossfield mechanics and get the spot? And do you understand getting the right angle and following your keys? And then the rules, you're going to have those weird scenarios come up and you've got to know those rules, and you just have to know them and have to be ready. So I have found that, okay, I can't commit an hour to the rule book, but you know what? I've got 20 minutes. And 20 minutes is better than 0. And
Correct.
if I spend every day going, gosh, I can't spend an hour, and I've lost 5 days, versus if I spent 3 days for 20 minutes, at least I got something out of it. And you can benchmark that to yourself and say, okay, well, next time I'm going to make the time to make it a half hour.
Right.
I personally, I'm good for 30 minutes to an hour, and then I need to take a break. And I would encourage folks, don't sit down with the rule book and expect to read the whole thing cover to cover in one sitting. You'll drive yourself nuts.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that's a very successful plan. But I think the idea here is, right. I mean, Michael and I, we work across the field in high school. I think we do a pretty good job together. I'm fortunate to be across the field from Michael. He's a great official.
Likewise.
But we go through about this, it's a little bit different, but that's our personalities, right? And so find something that works for you, right? The way that I do it probably doesn't work for a lot of people out there. And the way that Michael does it might not work for me.
I'm
way
sure
of doing
there's
it
lots
might
of
not
people
work
that
for him.
are driven nuts right now by what I just said.
But yeah, it's find what works for you. Like Michael said, if you can find 20 minutes, great. If you can find an hour, great. But yeah, do not try to read rules 1 through 10 in one sitting, because you're not going to retain much and it's just going to drive you batty. Break it down a little bit here, a little bit there, snippet here, snippet there, and it all comes together.
Yep.
I think that that's an awfully good overview in response to the questions here. So with that said, we want to thank you for joining us once again for this episode of Learn Your Stripes. We'll be back next week where we'll discuss field goals, tries, scrimmage plays, overtime, and much more. For now, as always, we'll leave you with the play to consider.
Okay, 2nd and 4 at the B36. A, whose cadence involves a clap throughout the game and has used that clap throughout the entire game, is driving. B47, knowing this clap comes up to the line and claps, and all 5 offensive linemen move. So what is the foul? Any different for high school or college? What's our down and distance? What's our game clock status? And our play clock status?
We'll discuss that play at the start of our next episode. In the meantime, if you want to let us know what your ruling would be, if you have any questions or feel that we made a mistake, if you're a new official who would like some help getting into the avocation, or if you'd like to submit other questions for us to address on our next or future episodes, please email us at learnyourstripes@gmail.com. You can find episodes or obtain an RSS link to directly download all episodes into your podcast app of choice at learnyourstripespodcast.com. Please also follow us on Facebook at Learn Your Stripes Podcast and on Twitter at LYS_podcast. If you enjoy our podcast, please rate us 5 stars and leave a review on Apple Podcast or your app of choice. You can also find us on the app Discord, where we have ongoing discussions of rules, mechanics, and play scenarios. We have separate channels set up there for high school and college discussions, as well as the plays of the week. We'll see you back here next week. In the meantime, keep learning your stripes.
Thank you, everyone.